Hey there, and thanks for tuning in to Coffee with Klingman, where I talk with some of the most interesting people I know over a good cup of joe. Today in the cafe, I have fitness and e-commerce entrepreneur Travis Lee talking about how to become an entrepreneur if you already got a family and a mortgage. Travis, hi.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Maya, this is my younger brother Jeremiah. Welcome as well.
Hello.
Hi. Howdy. So tell me about your journey to economic independence. We talked a little bit about this, but I'd be really interested to hear the story.
Right. So we were just talking before we started a bunch of interesting topics, but the one that seems to be frothy in this moment is journey to economic independence, which I want to put the caveat in that, again, that's probably a lie that internet marketers sell you on YouTube.
Why do you think it's a lie?
Well, just because, you know, I think for many people starting out, there's this illusion that I will start a business or I will have a career. I will make a bunch of money. And at some point in my life, either a career or an entrepreneurship or whatever happens, I'll achieve some goal, right? Maybe that's concrete, maybe it's not. And then afterwards, things will be okay. And it's just been my experience that, not to scare people, but that's never the case. And oftentimes when you get more and more independence, the illusion of the security that you had at a job or in a relationship sort of dissipates, right? So if you feel alone and you're just a person and you think, if I get that relationship, if I can get that date, if I can get that house, if I can lock this person down, if I can have more people around me, or even on the other side of the spectrum, if I build up all these defenses and I am this lone wolf, then I can really at some point, feel completely safe or like I've done it, right? A lot of times we will pursue this financial independence with the idea that then I'll be able to protect myself from anything that might make me not happy.
Got you. So what would you recommend for someone who is has that mentality if they're looking for that? What kind of mindset shift would you recommend? Or have you had to gone through?
We're talking about a person who thinks that if they make a bunch of money that they will be happy or not be concerned.
Yeah.
I think that cliche is pretty well addressed. If anybody's rolling with that right now, just have a little bit of sobriety in your thinking and understand that, anything can happen to you and, things are going to happen to the people you care about that, that's going to matter to you. That's going to affect you. There are going to be shifts in the economy. There are going to be shifts in your relationship and your health. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I got cancer at 19 and I was already athletic. So I never thought at 19, I'm going to get cancer, right?
Yeah. Never crosses anyone's mind.
No, it doesn't. But
Especially
like we were joking about earlier, if your current diet consists of Reese's peanut butter cups and Bang energy drinks, you're on a straight track to chemo and some radiation, I think, at some point in your life, unless you deviate off of that. That just doesn't... I think science kind of tells us now that if that's all you're eating or that's the majority of what you're eating, your likelihood of cancer at some point in your life is actually pretty high. Now, 19, I think that's still abnormal. All right, I won't blame it completely on a 12-pack of Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
So, but that's not my diet now. So if you're still operating under that illusion that you're going to arrive, you're going to become an entrepreneur, you're going to make a ton of money, or you're going to go and you're going to job, you're going to save a ton of money.
I feel like that's more common than the entrepreneur. And this might be just because I've only tipped my toes into the entrepreneur community. But coming from the very corporate jobs that I've had, it's very much this, there's a lot of people that have this idea that you just work hard, you put in the hours, and as you'll build up that nest egg, and then you'll have that security. And that's kind of the goal and what you strive for.
Yeah, I think that's super risky. That may be even more of a risky, mindset than the idea that you're going to go out, you're going to make a bunch of money. Let's set that goal, and then you'll be able to protect yourself from everything. So just to double back on that, I've just found that the more independence that I gain, there's definitely a correlation with happiness, right? Because we're after that. We should be after that at least in the most healthy way, the most fulfilling way first. And then pursue the the sort of the bucket list or the self-actualization checkboxes, right? But so that's a bit of an illusion in my opinion. that you're gonna cross this line. Oftentimes, like one of my most difficult transitions is when I actually became self-employed. So I've had pretty much held a job from 19 and cancer all the way into my mid-30s where I am now, okay, without showing my age cards too much, right? Right, so in the mid-30s...
You look like you're in your 20s, man.
Yeah, I'll take it, right? I'll take it. I don't want to look like I'm trying too hard, though. So I left my ball cap at home, so...
I gotta try and look young.
Exactly, right, exactly. Yeah, hang on to it, right? So one of the toughest transitions was, okay, I have what I've been chasing after. Now, if you are someone who's been stuck in a job that you hate, and maybe it's a long time, and now you've burrowed yourself into some constraints. We won't use, maybe burrow is a negative word because I don't want to say that if you have a family and you have a mortgage. And that was me. I mean, that's maybe what's most relatable to people who are a little bit older or people who just hate their jobs. I never really hated my jobs later on in my careers, but the earlier ones I struggled with. I had the car payment. I had the mortgage, right? I had my wife is stay at home, and I have a daughter, and I don't have a trust fund back east. I believe that's a lyric somewhere, right? But,
yes, yes, it is.
You guys are East Coast guys, right? I don't know if you're like right, exactly. Yeah. You're not the Cape Cod type, I assume, but it's like...
Oh no, I eat the chips, that's about it.
Yeah, eat the chips, that's about it. There's no like chips coming your way from some trust fund, right? So most of us aren't in that situation, all right? Yeah. Most of us are in a situation where we're delaying who we actually are through an idea. We're saying, I need to grab what's out there in the future. I'm going to move there, and it's going to make me happier. And I'm going to get this job, and it's going to make me happier. I'm going to be in that relationship, it's going to make me happier. I'm going to hit that dollar sign, and it's going to make me happier.
The grass is always greener.
And the grass is always greener. But I don't know, maybe one of those things will. Right? So what's the answer?
It's a really hard balance. And I think it comes down to the individual person personally.
It does.
Or what the goals are.
Yeah, actually, that's a much better way to put it. But
what do you mean by that?
Like if your goal is I want to have a healthy relationship with my family, live on a farm, and have 10 kids, maybe that goal will bring you true happiness. But if your goal is I want to have a multi-million-dollar business and take home a 6-figure paycheck every month.
Yeah.
That probably won't bring you that happiness.
Maybe it will. I would say right now that the vast majority of problems I have, even though I'm not in a bad spot, I could solve a lot of them with money.
Yeah.
A lot of problems can be solved with money. So I just want to be like balanced. And I guess what I was luring us into to this point is that like the only way you'll know is if you do it.
I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
A lot of people struggle with that.
And so the risk of saying when I'm 40, 50, 60, or 30, whatever, I guess I got to include 30 for 20-year-olds, or 20-year-olds put a ton of pressure on themselves. They're like, if I'm 22 and I don't have you know what I mean? Yeah. If I didn't beat my brother who went to college in entrepreneurship by 20-something, then I failed, or whatever. Like, you're risking a lot by hedging your willingness to face your own self-identity on such a long timeline, right? So if you're not happy with yourself, let's just say there's some people who are probably listening to this that maybe have elements of themselves, at least they're not happy with. And you're going to wait 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, maybe 60, maybe never, to address that.
That's hard.
That's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And if you associate that with something you just made up in your mind, that's something entrepreneurship will teach you, is if you're doing fast cycle entrepreneurship and you run a project, you can go into, there's projects I go into, I'm like, this is going to make money. And it doesn't. And then there's ones that you're like, and then it does. It's very tough to forecast, right? So I always push faster cycle iterations of testing.
Okay.
So if you're like, hey, I think I want to work in medicine. Let's say you want to work with kids, so you want to become a school teacher or something like that. Why aren't you already interning? Like you need to go to 4 years of school. I see this a lot in young people. They're like, sit down, like, okay, what am I gonna do? What's gonna make me happy? Okay, if I'm just a teacher, I could just see myself being in that classroom, or I could see myself in that office, or I could see myself, you know, doing that job. All right, cool. Sign me up. 6 years of college, 6 figures of debt later, come out of it, and then get the same job you would have got. I mean, I didn't graduate from college, but I was a serial collegiate, you know, patronizer, right? Like I have nearly, a bachelor's degree in essentially electives.
That's hilarious.
Because
that's hilarious.
Whenever I get interested in a subject, I'd be like, oh, well, I can't wait. I'm too impatient. I got to do it now.
Yeah.
So I'm impatient, I'm optimistic, and I think that's what we need people to have. You know, they need to be optimistic, they need to be impatient about what they want.
Yeah.
But not in like an unrealistic or negative way, because there's the sober at the other direction, right?
Yeah.
Meaning if you, let's just take
finding that balance.
That balance, right?
Yeah.
Let's find that career. So your career is, I want to work with kids. Okay. There are plenty of opportunities for you to go and work with kids as a volunteer. You can go sit in classrooms, you can help, you can get a taste of these careers in internships. And those are always the success stories that I hear. You'll hear people, I think I was talking about this earlier before we started too, where I as a kid remember being with professionals in a particular industry. In this case, it was the production industry, the video and film production industry, and they were doing video editing. And this is when Photoshop was new. And I was like, man, I want to learn Photoshop because I want to do what these guys are doing. They're messing with pictures all day. This is so cool. They're creating things that don't exist, that they're illusions of digital illusions and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like that's you tasted that, pursue it, break it into the smallest digestible chunk where you can actualize it, where you can play that. Sort of like kids, right? If a kid thinks he wants to be a doctor, what's he do?
He plays it.
He doesn't, right. He doesn't put off that dream. He goes, he gets a little hat on, and he's like, all right, I'm a doctor. And he puts his little stethoscope on like people's hearts, and he just kind of feels like, what's that like? People in careers postpone that actualization in almost like some sort of like masochistic manner, because they're just like, oh, well, I can't do that. That's too close to the real thing yet. I'm going to go to school for 4 years. No, I won't go over there. I won't try that. I need this and that. Or like we always joke about, Jeremiah, is that I can't start my business because I'm not done with this logo.
Yes. Oh, God.
Right.
So
That's
often,
hilarious.
So often that's a thing.
Dude, you sell anything yet? No, man, I'm still working on the logo. Angles just aren't right. I'm not inspired.
Yeah, but no, I got this. My buddy knows Photoshop, and I throw it by him. We'll see what
my
come back
designer's in the
But
way.
once that's done, we should be like 30 days to profitability. We got it. We got it going.
Yeah. We're basically, we have a $2 million valuation right now based on what we could do but haven't done yet.
That is the mentality of so many people. And do you think that comes out of this fear of, because I could say that's come, and what I've seen is that comes out of a fear of their true potential, and two, of failure.
I think that's exactly right, along with a huge amount of societal pressure to get educated, with society saying you can't do that until you have this.
Here, keep talking. I'm just going to put this closer because I realize that is not going to pick you up well. You're good. Okay.
Do you want to move in? Or are you good?
I guess I'm good. I think
I'm
good.
I'm watching the levels down here by my feet, and I think we're okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, I'll scooch in a little bit more,
testing.
and then I'm actually coming off a cold, so I'll try and talk deep into the mic.
Talk deep into the mic.
Right? Exactly.
Interesting. So you were saying about the pressure.
So yeah, I think you're exactly right. There's this. To add to that, there's massive amounts of societal pressure telling people, wait, you can't do that. If you wanna go be the teacher teaching kindergartners or whatever, you can't do that until you have this degree, until you have this amount of education. Don't intern yet. You can't do it. You have to have this first. So people delay that, thinking, I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'll fail. Society won't let me. What will people think?
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be too that people think that they're just not ready. I think that's the biggest thing that in procrastination we see in entrepreneurs or just anyone who's trying to get into a career. So let's equate going to school for 4 years to do something you could intern at tomorrow to not launching your business, right? And also like what people often who are entrepreneurs starting out will look to what other people are doing, and it is, you should just copy like what people are doing in order to, because they've failed through that. But I think they look for things to be permissible. Like, are actions permissible? And this is why I think being naive and optimistic. Earlier on, I felt naive and optimistic in life, like optimistic and naive. So I went to school in China. When I went to school in China, I was 18. I didn't have any money. Like I said, my dad had an illness and whatnot. Then I run off to China alone, and that's naive optimism, right? It's like, this was the year 2000. It's a little friendlier now. I mean, maybe in the current climate there's some drama, but it's still very much like people are like, China, what's that like? Rickshaws or some pagodas, or there's like no real clear idea. But I'm just like, no, it's gonna be cool. I'm out. Peace. Figure it out when I get there. Dang. And had that mentality, and people who almost know too much about business or careers and what the different steps are that you're supposed to go through,
or because they went through them,
or they suffer through it. Like usually parents and aunts and uncles kind of will respond more that way. Ironically, the people who are closest to you. Well, when I went through that track, I had to blah 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 blah. So you better get your brr. Well, it's 2019, and that the rules are different now, and your track is gonna be different than whoever's right next to you. So I think that more of that procrastination and that lack of impatience in action, it's impatience, whatever. I've heard people say that before too, where you're just continually like you're trying to test, you're trying to iterate, you're trying to learn, and that's what you're really trying to do, trying to get at value. People will throw money at value. People will throw attention at value. But if you haven't found value yet,
college isn't going to teach you value.
No, well, I won't. I'll agree with you on that right off the bat. I'm sure we could.
I mean, that'd be a whole conversation, but
I don't think that's the answer, right? That's not the only answer, right?
Yeah.
You're right.
Not the only answer.
Yeah,
right. It's not the only answer. I mean, I'm not talking about. I mean, and obviously, you always have to loop back and talk about the extremes because people misinterpret. So anybody out there right now who's thinking about becoming a surgeon,
like don't perform heart surgery. Don't look it up on YouTube.
Go to school.
Right.
It's okay.
Found this program in the Philippines, straight internship. They said they let you cut people right away.
Oh my gosh, that's fair. It's funny, I had almost the same exact conversation like a couple days ago with someone. We literally had to do the same thing. It's like, guys, don't be looking up heart surgery on YouTube. I'm sure there's a tutorial, don't do it.
Yeah, and there are many great doctors in the Philippines too. I'm sure it's a great place for medical tourism, so I don't want to let me not throw the Philippines under the bus here.
Fair enough. My girlfriend's actually Filipino. So fair enough.
I'm sure she's awesome.
She's pretty great. Going for OT actually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So like she's one that like you go to school, this is one of the things you got to do.
Yeah.
To get your license and to be able to do your thing.
Yeah, definitely need school education to be an OT. Not to be like a fitness professional.
Yeah, totally different.
It's maybe a little different, but that's where you get a little bit in the weeds with stuff.
And so you are a fitness professional, I guess we could say that.
I guess that's what I would...
Entrepreneur, fitness professional.
Entrepreneur and fitness professional, I think, is what I would call myself now, because my journey to sort of independence or self-employment at a position of stability, which is where we're at now, And I think that's what most people worry about. They're like, I don't want to give up. I probably could have just lived in like a friend's basement and not, and stayed there for a while I ran my experiments. But again, I was a little bit greedy in that I still wanted to have a life. Like I still went through, my wife and I dated for a couple years, then we got married, we had a good wedding, we bought a house together, we had a kid, we did the whole thing, all while I was like stewing up these, recipes of entrepreneurship and future independence on the side. And so that meant that I was working a lot. I mean, working full time and then working, a couple hours on the outside, but it didn't matter because I really liked it. I really liked, like the gym we have now is parkour. Back then it was Kung Fu. And I did the fitness stuff. I always thought I geeked out on it. I thought it was so cool. So it never felt too much like work. If anything, work felt super boring because of it, with the exception of a few of my career, my jobs and projects that I've been on or whatnot. But I think that the balance that people need to look for is, you have to find what makes you really happy and then chase it. And because that happiness you have from there, that gives you that feeling of like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. If you have that, then if you haven't found that, you need to test more. You need to experiment more. You need to get out. That's where the travel comes in. That's where internships at different places in your life come in. I recently had a friend, I'm skipping subjects a little bit, but practically speaking, if you haven't found the happiness thing yet, or the career that is sort of in the direction you want to go, maybe one of the best things that happens to you is you do lose your career, or you don't have to quit. You can keep one foot in the boat and one foot out, on the like escape boat or whatever, right? One on the ship, one on the escape boat when it comes to your career. But just go out. Everybody has the time in the day, all right? If you're caught up on Netflix, you have enough time to figure out who you are
100%.
And to find your passion.
Yeah.
And just run those experiments. I had a friend recently, and she had left her job, and she had a couple months, and the first thing she's thinking, and there's lots of pressure on her, people are like, go out, you got to get that next job. You got to find that next job. But my advice was go work for free for, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many places it takes until you find a place that you want to work and get paid and be, right? Why wait? Let's say your job is 6 months to 2 years for the average person or something like that.
Yeah.
Why wait 6 months or 2 years to be like, that's not the one I wanted? And then they went through it again, and that's not the one I wanted. And then they went through it again, and that's not the one I wanted. Because you're going to have to put in time at the one you wanted anyway to figure out it really isn't the thing you want.
Yeah.
So don't wait.
That's fantastic.
Like, why wait?
Yeah. Interesting. So that's this whole idea. What is that book? The book you recommended to me. It's the
a lot of info to go by.
I know, right? You've recommended a lot. It's the same idea of like just shooting for something instead of trying to make sure everything's perfectly aligned.
Michael Matheson.
Yes. Ready, aim, ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, aim.
Thank you. I knew we'd get there.
Book.
Absolutely great. And so it's the same idea, but applying it to, instead of applying to growing your business, applying it to finding your business and finding your happiness and finding your career is so have a rough idea. I think I want to try something like this, and then dive in. Dive in the internships, dive in how you can interact with that particular career, and then take that step back and be like, okay, what is this something that I want? Instead of setting up saying, this is what I think I want. Okay, so if that's what I think I want, this is what I have to do to get there. So you go through the schooling, you go through the years to get ready for it, and then you do it, and then you realize that wasn't what you wanted.
I think something to add to that is a lot of people, like you both of you mentioned, like internships and like finding ways to get into that field, whatever it is. I think something that a lot of people overlook is just communities. Like if let's say you want to be, we're talking about a teacher, right? Find people who do that. Build a community around that, especially with the opportunity that we have now with the internet, with fucking Reddit and Facebook and Twitter. You can find those communities. You can find those people and just make friends with them and see what they think. What would they recommend? How did they get started? And I feel like a lot of people often get stuck in, where's an internship? Where can I find that? Where can I find that opportunity?
Yeah.
Super practical.
It's very practical. And I think when I look back at, we started out talking about what was the journey to it. So let me just
So this is a great intro to that.
So I just, I'm from the Midwest. I was born in Minneapolis, but I was raised in Iowa pretty much. My father was a film and video producer who worked for ad agencies, so nothing really crazy and cinematic, but around production and my, that sort of those project management skill sets and a little bit of travel as a younger kid growing up. When he's about, I think I was coming into 8th grade-ish, something like that. He gets diagnosed with MS. So anybody who's had MS or any other sort of, I had a friend whose dad got Parkinson's, and this stuff happens to people. So if you had a family member or somebody that you're dependent on for income and stability, like a father figure or your mom or somebody who's like a grandparent who's going through that, it oftentimes puts kids in a position of responsibility perhaps earlier than they would have liked to have had had happened to their kids, and just the kid would rather, the kid doesn't really know what's going on. They're just like, oh, now I'm responsible for stuff. So I worked full time through high school, and then, but I was always chasing, what made me happy and what made me excited. And when I became interested we were at our poorest, I kind of became interested in Eastern philosophy. Just the timing was right. You had to have a lot of like non-attachment to things because you were losing everything.
Yep. Yep. I went through a similar thing.
Right.
When I was finishing up high school.
Yeah. So I can imagine for you, it's like, okay, I need to find some way to reconcile the absence of sort of getting like things from the outside, and for being happy, right? I got to find happiness elsewhere. And so I became very interested in Chinese philosophy and started studying Chinese philosophy. I get interested in Chinese language through that. And then in high school, I just don't have the money because I'm dumping everything back into like my family's life. And I think that there's a lot of people who are doing that. And this is the first point. So this is really the first point of period of acceleration in which there was a difference between what could have happened and what actually happened. This was a point of failure. This was a single point of failure. This moment, and that was when I decided that, and it was a somewhat selfish decision because everybody wasn't back on their feet yet on the family side. When I decided I'm going to go to China, because that's what is best for me and my happiness, and I think that if I'm better, other people will be better. I don't know how I justified that in my head at that time, or maybe I was just like, this doesn't look like it's getting any better anyway, I'm out. I can't remember exactly what was going on.
That's where you're 18, who knows?
But I can tell you at that point, their failure was not an option. It's just in my head, I believed that's where I was going. I'm like, I just try harder. I just try harder. I'll just work harder, and I'll just try harder. I'll figure a way out. And I ended up finding, I ended up doing, like, the local paper, like, interviewed me because they would highlight kids in school in some, like, articles or whatnot. I met someone who agreed to like partially support me and then later went on to fully support me my trip to China, right? So just constantly lobbying. I think that's that sales, that entrepreneurial side. Like I was selling my story. Like I'm out there, I've been studying this philosophy, I plan to go to China and go to school, and then later on, work as, I can't remember what I said at that point, what I was after, right? And I had a lot of people supporting me, but I got that money and then I just bought a one-way ticket and I left. So that's the first. I jokingly refer to these as quickenings. Okay. So it's pretty cliche right now to say that we live many lives. I think you hear that a lot in like social media and stuff right now. But there's just this concept that you go through these eras of your life, and sometimes those are influenced by where you are regionally, and sometimes something happens to you and then you overcome it, and then sometimes things just change around you so much that you don't recognize your high school buddies anymore or whatever, right? Yeah. And whenever you pursue your dreams or what makes you happy through one of those eras or one of those points of failure, I refer to that as a quickening. So that's kind of a play on the Highlander series where, they get this, if anybody doesn't know what Highlander is like this old show. I think they're going to release another one soon.
Are they really?
Yeah. But I was looking up the other day, like, I don't know, maybe it's 2020 or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
And basically there are these immortals, and then there's this broader game throughout these hundreds of years of history where when the immortals battle, like one has to, and then it gets really gruesome, so I'm sorry for the analogy, but they get in a battle and they take the head of the other immortal and then they experience what's called the quickening, and then that person gains that power from that other person. Well, I'm drawing that as a metaphor for experience, right? Like you go to battle with poverty, and then you still come out the other side doing what you wanted to do. That's a quickening. It gives you energy, it gives you a good story, and I swear, I was going through this stuff and I was like, it'd just be good for the book one day. And I can remember thinking that as like a teenager.
100%.
Who had a very horrible writing. Like, I think my biggest fear in one of my first career jobs I got was that I was going to have to type in emails in front of people, like someone would be sitting next to me. Funny. And I was so afraid that like they'd look at me and my spelling and judge my like right clicks on the red lines.
That's so funny.
It was like so bad. Anyway, so I experienced that first quickening, and that's what I would describe, these tests of character and what makes things more fulfilling in the future. So I could have said, I have a responsibility, and that's to stay at home and stay on the farm, even though I think I might have been on a farm at that time. I can't remember. It was Iowa, so it's kind of everything kind of feels like a farm. So
That's fair.
Or do you go off and try and on that journey, that heroic journey, and make a new life, right? And I said, I'm going. And so I left. I went to China, bought a one-way ticket. I flew into China. I knew what university I was going to go to, but there were delays. And I literally show up at 3 a.m. in this airport in China as an 18-year-old. No idea. The city is something. It was something like 6 million people. I didn't know where I was supposed to go.
That's amazing.
But I was so blindly naive.
And
I'm just
so
like,
naive, yeah.
I'm just like, I'm going to China. Did you get the ticket? Got the ticket. I'm out. And I don't even talk about the visa stories. Or I'd gone to get my visa because I knew I needed a visa or a pass. I didn't know what a visa was, and it was lost in the mail. And
How did you get it?
he was just going through this.
I'll get my visa tomorrow.
Yeah.
how do you know you're going to get your visa?
I don't. I very much don't. And even if I do, I still don't know if I'll get it.
So that's what I was saying. I'm like, I'm supposed to get my visa tomorrow. I get a call from the police station. They're like, hey, we found your passport downtown. And the city I was from was not that small, a couple 100,000 people. Like downtown, they're like, yeah, cabbie picked it up on the street.
What?
And they gave it to me with my Chinese visa in it, like a week before I was supposed to go.
That's so much luck.
That's
Oh my
so much luck.
gosh.
So much luck. And so I'm like, just so I show up in China with my dirty visa that's been in like, some cabbie's
sorry,
like,
Yeah.
sewer or whatnot.
Yeah.
So
You're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, can you grab something?
we just had
Thanks.
a little coffee environmental spill.
Yeah, and this is a nice pool table. So, thanks, Maya.
Oh, you good?
Okay, so you were saying.
Maya's on
I was expecting this.
clean up. Yeah, but it was
God.
what? Yeah, it's just gonna happen. It's okay. A little bit of
Right.
You're fired.
like, what's a pool table without a few unexplained stains?
This is very true. It's got to have that character. It's a little too professional otherwise.
Right? So I show up in China. I just get in a cab and I'm just like, hey, take me to the foreign language university. And
Teach
like-
me your language.
he's like, which foreign language university? So he
Oh my
drives me for
gosh.
40 minutes into town. It's cold or whatever. I just he just lets me out. There's no real dialogue. My Chinese wasn't that great at that point. And I didn't even know then everything that they're at that point is just culture shock. I didn't know that the schools have usually have gates and barriers around them of concrete. It's not like you walk to CSU and you're or some sort of state university in the US and it's like meadows of fields. That's something we've constructed in some
It's part of the town.
Yeah, right. It was and there's no way in. And he just drops me outside of this university. I just wander around the outside until I saw an open gate, and I sneak an open gate, and then I find a light on, and there's this old real gruff. This dude looks like Wolverine, right? But with a Mao jacket on, those big poofy Mandarin collared. Yeah,
I love the
very
visual.
Soviet
Yes.
Mao, and he's got this tin cup. Hipsters rock them now, but it was an original,
This is pre-hipster.
right, exactly,
The original,
tin cup
yeah.
with some tea in it, and he's real gruff under one singing hanging bulb, right?
Yes.
Not real good lighting.
bulb is
yellow,
moving.
yeah, it's just yellow, and he's just kind of I can understand a little bit because my Chinese wasn't that good. But he's just get in, right? And I was just hey, I'm trying to explain to him I'm a student, and he's just I knew it was a school. So he's just oh, come on, right? And he takes me to a room, and he gives me a room, gives me 3 blankets, and I was dope, I'll figure this out in the morning. So I come back down, and then they're and I'm hey, my name is, at that time I just gave my Chinese name, right? And then I'm I'm supposed to find the university, I'm looking for foreign language university, and blah, 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 and they're where have you been? We sent somebody to try and find you, and that ended up being my dorm room. And I just stayed in that room the rest of the trip that I was in China.
Wow.
So I was so lucky that I just wander
Level
in.
10 luck right
Level
there.
10 luck at naive, just sometimes if you're so
naivety.
yeah, you're so naively optimistic. You're just no, we just go this way. That kind of feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a that kind of feels right.
Yeah.
Sort of trust your intuition person, and intuition's always served me really well. And so. Yeah, I stayed there. So I stay there for a year. I go to school in China. I have a roommate that I meet there who's from Colorado. And I get done with China. I come back to the U.S. I start a new job just because I knew I needed to get some income. I was going to try and pay back my debt, right, to the person that lended me the money. And I get a job for a cell phone company, and I'm just in a call center, right, like taking customer service calls, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a lump on my neck, and I'm just really skinny, and like I was really low on weight, and I go to the doctor. They ignore it the first time. Second time they come around, like, you got to come back right away. And then it turns out that I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer, right? So it's stage 2, which means it's like, if you know anything about cancer, it's like it's not the worst it could be, but it's also not great. I mean, no cancer is great, but this is lymphatic cancer. So I found it originally because like I was wheezing because it was a cancer of the lymph nodes. The lymph system runs along your windpipe, and I had a node that was there. They said it was about the size of a walnut. And it was pushing on my windpipe. So when I'd inhale in my diaphragm, there'd be this long delay, like when you let the air out of a balloon. So I kind of felt like I was suffocating. And now as an adult, I would recognize that. I didn't get it back then.
You're just like, oh yeah, just breathing.
I'm just breathing, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It was freaking like horrible, right? So I have to go into chemotherapy. At that time, I'm still supporting like my sister. You know, my parents don't have a bunch of money. My sister lives with me. I'm working full time. I don't have a car. I'm like bumming rides to chemotherapy.
Yeah.
And like it is rough, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just watching like the old like I think it was the Cell Saga on Dragon Ball Z with like Trunks, right? Where he's in this like dystopian future and Gohan's like the only one left and he gets killed or something like that. That's all I had on like DVD. So I'm watching this horribly depressing dystopian like anime. And that's what I have, right? Exactly. But instead of like crying, I was just like, I don't think I cried during the entire time. And I was so determined to not be sick. I did not. I threw up once. And that's because I got cocky and ate chili cheese Fritos right after chemotherapy.
Oh.
And I think I'd throw up now if I ate chili cheese Fritos. But I was like, I'm going to eat these chili cheese
problem.
Fritos. Right, exactly. So anybody who's going through that, just like my advice is like if you're going through some treatment or something like that, you have to think of it as a quickening, right? This is the second quickening, right? The first one's poverty. The second one is as we make these up as I go, right? Making up chapters for the book. And the second one is this cancer. Like I wanted to train. I'd gone to China, and when I went to China, I just like I wanted to like learn what like Jet Li. You guys know Jet Li, right?
Oh yeah.
Jet Li, the action Hong Kong or the Chinese actor, right? Lethal Weapon 4, Once Upon a Time in China. He was in like, I mean, what's he been in more recently? I don't know, but all the Chinese. I followed Chinese cinema, and I was like, I want to go. So I went when I was in China. I would go to I went to sports university as well. So I studied Mandarin Chinese, and a foreign language university and had coaches from sports university. And in China, you can go to school for martial arts. Like it's a degree.
That's a degree.
Yeah. So you have to study like different branches of martial arts and sporting and the Olympic stuff and judo and taekwondo and the other martial arts that are common in the sport in the world.
Not to go on a terrible sidetrack, but do you think we should in the States implement that? Like, was that super beneficial for you?
No, I think that 6 figures of debt is not worth it.
Fair point.
Yeah, just take a kung fu class and save yourself $100,000. No, yeah, I think that physical education should be taken more seriously, especially since a lot of people want to pursue that and they don't necessarily want to work in like as an OT or something like that. However, the honest truth sidetrack. The honest truth is, if you want to work in the health and fitness industry, you have to be committed to helping people, and you get to work with 2 demographics, and neither of those are college or professional athletes. It's the young and the old.
Interesting.
Kids need help right now, and old people need help right now. And so don't go to school thinking that, I can't wait to help somebody who is scoring touchdowns with a sprained ankle. You better be like really into it. You're probably going to be helping some kid with a sprained ankle and some lady with low bone density who tripped, right? So that's what you're dealing with.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I get through chemo, right? I work through chemo, and right when I get out of chemo,
you worked through chemo.
Yeah.
Damn.
So full time, right? Like I said, 3 12s or whatever it was to get above, to get like where I could get my full-time benefits.
Yeah. Right?
Because I had just gotten that job and I just qualified for benefits, so I had to maintain that to be able to do I still incurred massive debt, even with insurance. I didn't know how to pick insurance, so I'm like, well, I want more choice. So you take the one that doesn't cover as much,
Yep.
and then you
Yep.
get cancer, and then you're like sitting on tens of thousands of dollars of bills and whatnot. So I get through that, and I'm like, cool, well, what's next, right? I'm like, I really want to compete. I had gone to school to compete and learn wushu, which was the traditional Chinese, or the contemporary Chinese sport. And that's like, so if you don't think of Kung Fu, you could think of like, Bruce Lee and stuff like that. But wushu is like the contemporary sport. So it wasn't fighting. I wasn't a fighter. I've never really been a fighter. I've tried a little bit of sport stuff, but it's not my jam. So I was more of an exhibitionist. So it was like flips, kicks, jumps, right? You go through and you do the routines. You've seen that stuff. And it's very acrobatic, and very high-level athletes do it.
Parkour.
Yeah, there's the overlap, right?
I was gonna
Parkour-y.
Yeah, very, very much like that, and very taken very seriously. And so I flew to Orlando. This was within the first year of getting done with chemotherapy, and I went and I competed at these U.S. nationals. And I was just such a hacker, man. Like, I knew that to really be good enough, I wasn't going to qualify for the event that I wanted to be in. But I've always been just such a hacker, and so I refused to not have that experience. I wanted that experience because that's just what I wanted, and it was going to happen. So I qualified in Tai Chi. So you can qualify in Tai Chi if you place high enough in Tai Chi. And I knew for my age bracket of 19 that the competition was like not going to be present in Tai Chi. And my Tai Chi was like okay enough. I knew a few forms. All I had to do was place like in the top whatever. I can't remember what it was. I place in the top whatever. I get like 4th or 5th in my age division. That qualifies me for all of the other competitive circuits. And then I get to compete with the people who are like really fancy and really high level. I get out there. It was probably a mess. I was talking to my wife about this in the morning. I hadn't even been thinking about it. It was probably a mess. It was probably like you could tell right away that I didn't belong at the same caliber as these athletes. But it was still like, wushu in the U.S., even though it was in like Orlando at some hotel or whatever, right? So it's like, people weren't offended by it. But I know that it wasn't like, I came back Rocky and got the gold. It was more like, I just had that experience. But that's what mattered to me.
You gotta breathe through those experiences.
Doing it, to actualizing in that way. So within 6 months of getting out of chemotherapy, I go back, my like barely like any hair on my head, right? Because you lose your hair through chemotherapy. And I can remember, just like baby scruffed head, like not even had my first haircut yet, already pushing through that quickening.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll do that. Well, what's next? Now we're going to start the school. So I worked this entire time because I was trying to save enough to just do whatever I wanted. I was convinced at 26 I was going to be a millionaire or something like that. And just wanting that is not enough. You got to put the work in. And that's what took me so long to get the financial independence, is because I was just all over the place, right? You have to have that laser focus. But I could get it in enough spurts to get me ahead. So I started the Kung Fu school. I started training. I ended up working with an instructor out of Chicago whose name was Daniel Pacina, and still this day is like my biggest influence as far as like coaching and my athletic discipline. Daniel Pacino, later on, I went to him for martial arts to learn his culture, right? To learn his he's in Chicago, and to learn his style and to get to that high level. Later on, I learned that he's a Ninja Turtle, like from the original movies.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
No, not playing. Like in the freaking suits, right?
Yeah. What?
And then I go back.
Raphael, was he Leonardo?
Yeah, he did
Was
Leonardo with the swords in the scene
what?
with...
Ninja Turtles are my favorite superheroes, by far.
That's
Really?
so
100%.
I used to get so
nuts.
amped watching him as a kid. And here's another, like, who you wanted to be trained by a Ninja Turtle, right? He's like... And that was so amazing to me. I learned it later on. I thought it was so great. And so I get him to be willing to kind of partner a little bit and come over and teach. He teaches some classes. I run the school, even though my level's like not super high still at that point, in my opinion. I mean, better than most, but for what you're looking at, you always want to be looking at the best.
Yeah.
You always want to compare yourself to the best, as long as it's not like destroying your like self-confidence. But you want to strive for that. So I was like, man, I'm not Raphael, or I'm not Leonardo, so I'm not there yet. And so he would come
and literally have Leonardo come and work for you.
Well, for is very, very difficult word to say. With he was certainly the one getting paid.
That's
But yeah, he was such a great person, and I met a group of people there that I trained with that were students who are by far better than me, still better than me today. And also, he ended up also being Johnny Cage from the original Mortal Kombat.
Wow.
So if you're familiar with the Mortal Kombat franchise, he did the original, like, they took a 35mm camera and they borrowed from somebody's dad and sat in a warehouse on boxes filming the flying sidekicks shot by shot and then pieced them together. That's why that game looks so real, because it was actually photographed.
That's amazing.
That's
And
insane.
they just took
so
the little
amazing.
sprites and linked the sprites together for each move, and that's why it looked so real.
Oh my gosh.
And
Uh-huh.
that was your trainer.
That was my coach, my
That's
master,
phenomenal.
my Sifu, right? So that was my coach, and he was at my wedding. We've fallen out of touch a bit, but I'm sure if I showed up, we'd pick up right where we left off. That's just what happens when you have different eras in your life. And so he had another student a couple of students that I became close friends with. So I started that school, but then like money starts to sway me towards some of the fitness industry, because the school is great culturally, but it's not making the same money. So I start this other business with a partner of mine who was a former U.S. Olympic hopeful for the Taekwondo team, and he is awesome. And he's got a lot of clout with like his abilities, and so we start this this kickboxing like program, with fitness kickboxing program, and in like a year it goes from like 8 people that were my coworkers that I just hustled into into my little kung fu gym, which is about the size of this room here we're in, maybe like 400 square feet or something. And then I hustle them in. We get our get our first demo started, and then like, you know, some bigwig just like in a movie or whatever shows up and he's like, I'm here to look at your program. And then you're like, well, here it is, 8 people kicking stuff, and they're like, we need one of those. And then contracts us to work for this defense contractors recreation center. And it was massive, like I think like 3 basketball courts with a track, and then we just get like one of the basketball courts they refinish with, they put 50 bags up, and then we just ran our kickboxing program. Like my partner went full time on it, just that, and then that just blew up, right? We had like hundreds of members at that point.
Damn.
So I then like, by then, like, I'm married. My wife has she's pregnant. We're about to have our first kiddo, and I'm thinking like, what's next? Right? And I'm like,
how many years have passed?
I'm like 20,
Like in that
mid-20s.
in that business.
From China to that, through that project. I mean, that's like China to the Kung Fu school to all those businesses. I think that it was about a decade, so maybe like eight years through all that. Some of that stuff happening faster than the others. And towards the end, the Kung Fu school was in 2007 or something like that. But I can remember sitting there on the board doing the dry erase board thing, the visualization stuff. Like I had a little dry erase board in my house with my wife. I'm just like, $100,000. Like, how many members do I need to get to make $100,000?
Right on the phone.
Right, exactly. Was it? I don't know. All I remember at that time that like
07. Would that be like a year or 2 before the iPhone came out?
Yeah. Well, I had a Razor, so
That was
the cool phone to have at the time.
Exactly. Everyone knows exactly when that was.
Yeah. So back in whatever your Razors were being used. So I like I'm writing on the board, and that's what you guys should do. Is like, this is what I want to see happen, and you draw it out as clear as you can. I think The Secret was popular back then too, so maybe that's where I got
funny.
the visualization stuff. And I'm like, I'm gonna write down exactly what I want to see happen.
Yeah.
And I think I wrote like $100,000 on like a dollar bill, like one of the bills from the gym that I made. And I'm like, I want to make it. It wouldn't take me very long to do the math and figure out that in my little piddly Kung Fu school, $100,000 was gonna be pretty tough.
Yeah.
So that sobering helped me focus more on something that was more financially viable. And sometimes you have to take that truth and think, what do I want more? Do I want to remain in this scenario where I sort of have some of my dream friends, but I have to keep a job? My coach is a Ninja Turtle, you know, is like, and my friend, and I have these connections, but I'm still in Iowa.
Yeah.
And that's what got me. I still have a job, and I'm still in Iowa.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need out. Like, that matters the most to me. So my wife was about to have a baby. I called up my friend my college roommate from China. So this is going, you know, another like almost a decade back. And I'm like, hey man, what are you doing? Do you have work for me? He's like, yeah, because I knew he was starting the software company. It was a senior project when we were in school. He had grown it to an enterprise software.
Dang.
And he's like, yeah, I need a project manager.
Impeccable?
This is Encompass Technologies.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in Old Town.
Okay.
And he hired me as like I think it was like one of the first 10 employees or something like that. He hired me and said, yeah, I need you out here as a project manager. I need you now. And I'm like, well, my wife's about to have a baby. He's like, yeah, well, I need project managers now. And that's something too that I think
that's a
that
really hard call.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Nope.
Not for you.
Nope.
Okay.
I knew right away.
Okay,
I
so
was like,
tell us
next
about
step,
this.
convince my wife to go. And so, because I knew that's what I want. I was thinking
Interesting, yeah.
Colorado, like you guys, if you don't live in, especially back then, now it seems more common to see people come into Colorado or whatever. Like this is like when you live in the Midwest or you live in a town that doesn't have a big population or it's not the city that you want to go to, you know what I mean? And those sort of things. You want that new life. You want to get out. You want to see what that's like. So I decided, okay, well, forget it. I'm going, and we got to get my wife on board. And I just told her about it, and she's like, well, but we're gonna have this baby. Can we kick it out? I'm like, well, here's how we'll handle the situation. I'll be back and forth a little bit in the beginning. And she was down, but she was down. There was no resistance. My wife has always been down. Like super down. Whenever I make like a decision and try and like lobby for it, it doesn't take much. She's usually just like, yeah,
That's
no,
fantastic.
usually you make good decisions, so I'm gonna trust you, and just let's do it. And so I started the job a week after we had our baby. It was our first baby, Nova, and she was born in Cedar Rapids in Iowa. And then 2 months later, I had the U-Haul, and I bought the house. I bought a house in Colorado without talking to her. Like, I was like, I have this house, I think it's great, we should get it. And she's like, you sure? I'm like, trust me, because I knew where we were coming out of. This is better than what we're in now. And she's like, all right, okay, I send pictures, good. And a realtor was like, are you sure about this? You're gonna buy a house without your wife seeing it? I'm like, trust me, she's down. And so, bought it, moved out. We moved out, and that's when we moved to Colorado. That was just turning 2011, April of 2011 or something like that. And so, so then as soon as I got to Colorado, I started working at that software company and helped my buddy out and learning a lot there, just increasing those disciplines. My wife, my family, we'd made it out, and we'd moved. And then the next thing was, how do I get to do the work that what makes me really happy, right? And that's when I just decided I'm going to study whatever's good around here and see what I can make a connection with. So I started with CrossFit, because back at that time there's only 3 CrossFit gyms like in Fort Collins. And I was in like the first or the second one or something like that.
Wow.
And so I studied really hard, but CrossFit, like, I liked the fitness world and I knew about it, but something about it to me didn't feel sustainable. I was also really light, and in CrossFit, I know some people probably do CrossFit, it's very hard to lift the weights at a competitive level if you don't have that. I mean, you're talking about lifting a lot of weight. You gotta be really strong. And I was always more like kind of an agile, like, lighter guy, right?
You want it to be at a competitive level.
And I wanted to be able to see how I could be, at least in my own way, the best at what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I just could not see myself at that level and it also just wasn't new enough after a while. And but I learned a ton from it, and I really think CrossFit brings a lot of good. There's CrossFit gyms and there's CrossFit gyms. You'll know what that means if you know CrossFit. So I ran into these guys who were studying parkour at that time. So I started actually training parkour in like 2012 or something like that, 2012, 2013. And then I met my partners now through Apex. And then we started opening an Apex standalone location. And at that time I was in Loveland. We stayed in Loveland for a year, but we were in Fort Collins. So that was when we started the business. Nurtured that for years, really. At a period of time there, I go through a transition out of working for that software company. One of the guys I trained with in Chicago, who was also doing motion capture work, modern motion capture work for Midway in Mortal Kombat, he moves to the Bay Area, starts a software company, and is like, hey, I need a project manager. And I'm like, great, because I want to work remote. And so I hustled really hard and worked really hard for them too, and then that's when I made a real transition. That to me was a big deal. I think most people who are thinking right now, in order to live life the way I want to live it, do I need to be an entrepreneur? Well, ask yourself, is it just, do you just want to stay at home and have a little more control over your time? Because then maybe remote work is what you should be doing. Like, you gotta ask yourself, how deep do you want to go? Right? If it's just, I just want to be at home, see my family more, I've got my home office, I like that, I want to go for walks, I want to be around my home gym, I want to be able to cook and eat, I'll save money that way, I just like being at home and just having a little more freedom, or I want to be at a shared workspace, get a remote job. And it's a different discipline. It'll teach you discipline in a different way, like how to sort of fend for yourself. So a lot of this is really just tapering into, because if you just go from having a job to self-employment, it can be very jarring. It's like losing a spouse in some ways, probably, or I haven't had that happen, so I don't want to say that, but I feel like a part of your life is missing.
Yeah, it's very dramatic change. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who are older who've been working now in these careers, and they may not realize how comfortable they've gotten with knowing what their routine is. And then when I came and started working from home, one of the biggest conflicts I had was actually my wife was used to me being gone a lot, and now I was home and had opinions and projects.
She's like, leave me alone.
I'm like,
Travis,
this is what we do.
please.
I've been working for like 15 years now. This is how we go. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get that done today. This is that. And she's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
I have a system.
I was just gonna have some coffee and watch Netflix. I don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, be ready for that. So then I ended up being a shared workspace, and that's actually where I met Jeremiah, right? So that pulled me into a little more away from home and a little more healthy relationship with the work and whatnot. But yeah, another Chinese connection. So all of this comes from the defining moment. Okay, wait, let me round it out. So I worked for that agency for a couple years. The gym grows on the outside. I get involved in e-commerce and drop shipping from a buddy who just blew up in drop shipping, and he was one of the students in my Kung Fu school.
Oh, okay.
No
But we
way.
reconnected later, Joel.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a student in my Kung Fu school, and we reconnected later when he came to town. He's like, hey, I'm in Colorado because I'm selling a car or whatever, and he came over to my apartment, and I was like, dude, his business is doing really good, and I gave him some numbers and whatnot, and he's like, that's cool, one of my businesses does that in like a month. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, and I just remembered him, like, he was like a scrum from, like, I was like, I'm going to shut up here, now I'm humbled. And so he started teaching me about drop shipping and other e-commerce stuff and Facebook, and I used that to leverage and grow the other businesses that I was involved in too. And so I spun up some of that stuff, and that created some redundancy, right? And that stuff got bigger. And so eventually you came to a point where it was like, my Silicon Valley agency job was not in direct competition, but it was just, do you make that choice? I know kind of what the ceiling is in this job, which is a dream job, but I don't know what the ceiling is over here. So what's next? What's next is figuring out what's the ceiling and what you can do with near absolute freedom of your time and being an entrepreneur with an already lucrative couple of businesses, right? That's how people should step out. This idea that you're just like, I can't stand it, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna start. Like it's very hard to do things that are scary when you're already scared, right? You have to be either naively optimistic or confident, right? You have some redundancy. You can play. I played with so many things with my extra money until I found something that worked, but there was never a huge risk. I messed with like crypto. No, we all know how that ebbs and flows, right?
Yep.
But
Lots of ebbing and flowing.
I've forgotten about that, right? And whatever. So, that's what you have to do is create those little like redundancies and slowly work your way. What's the next closest thing?
Yeah.
And I like the idea of trying to make change in under a year. Like think of a big goal that's like 8 months out because it's just under a year. Because I feel like you don't take annual goals too seriously, and then try and find shorter term. What's the closest thing I can get to that right now? So
like a 90-day year.
Yeah, 90 year, and then now is very important. Action now. So at that point I decided, okay, I'm going to step away from, and I actually went part-time for a year. Like I cut my hours at the agency in half, and then still worked on the entrepreneurial stuff. Once I was sure that I would be safe, that I wasn't going to lose my house, that I was making money, that I could scale up stuff, I cut the cord completely. I even actually by the time I cut the cord, I had insurance and benefits built into my businesses. So it was like I stepped out of one world right into, and sure you take a little bit of a pay cut when you do that, but I stepped out of that world right into a feeling of pretty good security. I think that's what people should try and build.
Yeah, by like tiptoeing into it, so to speak.
But impatiently.
Yeah.
You can't be like, well, I think about starting this business, blah, blah, blah. Because there is going to come a time when that business takes more attention, and that's when I had to go part-time. But I was valuable enough that I was lucky enough to be able to do like half time at the job and still have
instead
some
of
additional
getting
income.
so burnt out in a current business or job and
Yep.
then being like, fuck it, I'm done, I'm doing that, but that goal is really 10 steps out and you could have been on step 7 by the time you quit.
Right. And that's the honest answer is like, do you really just want out, or could you really just work twice as hard? Like I work 13-hour days.
Yeah.
I mean, I would leave in 6 in the morning. I'd start work at 6 sometimes, and at one point in this journey, and I would drive to 3 cities to work on the gym, to work where we live to Old Town to the gym. Right, I'd have this like triangulation, horrible commute, and I'd leave at 6:30, and I'd come back at 10, like most days of the week. So you could have that security. So I wasn't somebody who was coming out there and had to be a lone wolf and not have a family, right? Because this whole time I was stressful, but I was able to still grow and raise a family. And now I'm at that point where I have that, some security. And yeah, sure, I could have just like pulled the plug on everything, and maybe I would 10x what I have now, or maybe I wouldn't have what takes time, which is a relationship and a family. Like you can always go make more money in a very short amount of time if you work super hard. There's a question mark around that. I guess it's always, but it's feasible.
Yeah.
But you can't have a 10-year marriage in a year. I mean, if you have a marriage that feels like 10 years in a year, you're gonna want to rethink it, right? So you know what I'm saying? Like you can't have that. So it's good to build it, but you have to have this sense of you have to be thirsty and have this sense of urgency around it.
Do you think that part of that sense of urgency, from hearing your story, this is what it sounds like, that a good part of that sense of urgency came from your like taking that responsibility so early on, that first quickening that you called it, that close connection with poverty, and where you had to be financially responsible at a young age, and when you were so close to that poverty line that gave you the motivation to push forward? Or do you think it was something that like you just had inside of you before that, or it was developed from something else?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a combination of the discipline of martial arts, of some feelings of insecurity. So I actually failed 8th grade 3 times.
3 times?
3 times. All.
Damn.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. So I went to a public or private school, and for those of you guys if those people who are going to a private school, I recommend that you, unless it's Harvard, I recommend that you. I don't even know if Harvard's private. Is it private? A private institution.
Not a
Sounds
clue.
like
I
it'd
didn't
be
even think
private.
about it.
Well,
I don't
I
even
would
know
say
anything
it's
about
private.
Harvard. So
It's freaking up there, so sure.
well, all right. So you just be sure you know where your level of education is at. My experience with homeschooling, with charter schools, with private schools that don't have rigorous academic standards is that oftentimes you're left behind in some areas. So other areas I was able to foster smaller class sizes. I learned to relate to adults really early on. I learned to be responsible in my communication and have high expectations about how I interact with people, and that helped me. But my math was horrible.
Do you think those other skills made up for it?
Hacking made up for it.
Okay.
I'm a hacker.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Because that's what made up for it. Because I was like, I failed 8th grade. Well, I just didn't want to go. So I got into public school, and I didn't like it because you know how, I'm not going to say public kids school are, but if you went from like this, like no one's allowed to bully you, or your conflict doesn't experience that way, to where you're just a number because the school I went to just had hundreds of kids in it. And it just was very hard to relate and get along, and I was poor, so like I couldn't buy the same like Jinko jeans as everybody else. So
funny.
You know what I mean? Right. So I'm like, how do I connect with these people? And I can't take girls on dates because I don't have like a house. So like, and at that point, I think I was like, we were kind of like I was in a van. And I think, funny enough, I remember staying in a sound studio for a while or something like that. Right? Really bizarre. But then I just one day figured out I could leave. And once I knew I could walk off school campus, I'm not telling kids, please don't walk off school. This was
Not
like,
trying to give you that idea.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't as old as like Stranger Things era, but it's not that era anymore. Kids just can't walk around.
Yeah.
So I would just leave, and then I got in trouble for attendance. And I was like, I don't like it. This is weird. Like, the stuff you guys are asking me to do. Like, I was back to like monochrome, like, because I was went to private schools where the education level was higher. I'm used to like, I want my Mac.
Yeah.
And they've got me in front. Now people relate. Now they understand. And then when I was in 8th grade and I said, I want my Mac, people were like, what? What do you mean? Like, man, I'm
You
not.
don't get a Mac.
They're like, no, get in there, put this plastic thing over your fingers and learn to type, right? And it's just like in a green monochrome, right, screen. I'm like, what is this? No, that's not how I roll. I'm not doing that. And they're like, you're going to learn to type because you need to know computers. I'm like, I can already use Photoshop. And you guys, some people make hundreds of thousands of dollars using Photoshop right now in the 90s, right, as designers, right? So I was like, whatever, I'm out. So I skipped that. I went into, I got the option to go to summer school. So I went to summer school and I did great in summer school, small class sizes. That's really the key, is like get with the groups that change your groups and get with the groups. So if you're having trouble relating in a school right now and you're a high school kid or something like that, don't go this like, don't be a victim, all right? You have to find a way to take ownership over your relationships, choose the people you want to be with, make sure they're positive, and just refuse to accept anything else. Don't accept friends who don't lift you up. You're the only people who aren't where you are the people you're trying to help. You don't have any room for anybody else. You have people who are where you're at, who have the same problems. You have the people who are trying to get where you are, and that's a healthy relationship. And then you have the people who are where you want to be. And so you don't have time for people who are trying to pull you down. Cut them out, no matter who it is.
Yeah.
Family, friends, whatever. It's not healthy. Later on, you can justify by saying you'll go back and help them once you figure stuff out. But that's be a lie. You don't want to talk to them in the future anyway. So,
I think I've heard that before as a 30% rule. Have you ever heard that?
No.
I guess it would be 33%. 33%.
Oh, okay.
Like if we in your community have 33% of the people where you are and you like at your level, 33% underneath you where you're helping them, 33% above you.
Yeah.
Where you're learning.
And intentionally developing that community, regardless of whether you're like a high school student or an entrepreneur, no matter where you are, what your goal is, developing that community is crucial. I think anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And from a bit of a, I think I've heard that before too, so I might have just digested it that way. But a more finite way that I would express it is there are people that have the same problems as you. It's more pragmatic. Find the people who have the same problems as you, because you're probably going to be able to fix your problems with their help, or they're going to be willing to make the same sacrifices. If you're both broke, you're both willing to work for sweat equity, right?
True.
If you, and then you want to be someone's been there before, so you got to go work for them for free. If you can make money on your own doing things with your buddies, and that's equitable, the money you make from that, you got to go use to work to help you cover your own expenses while you work for somebody else who knows what you want to know. And you have to be humble in that way. Go work for them for free, all right? It'll always benefit you, because they'll be like, oh, that person, they're super helpful and I just need somebody. Anybody who gets into positions of success is probably moving really fast, and they just want people they can trust, who can learn fast and do things. Don't underestimate that, because they don't have the time to look for the person who's been in school for 4 years following the right way, right? You're there.
Yeah.
If you're always there, eventually they're going to be like, all right, take this opportunity, run with it. And that's when you have to impress. And then you're going to need people to do the stuff that you already know how to do, that you can't do anymore, and still get better. So that's that relationship, the other direction. You're going to pay them. You pay them, and then you help them, okay? Or you give them some advice or whatever. I suppose maybe they do some stuff for free for you, but you make sure you give back, and that makes that relationship healthy. Otherwise, it's like, you're kind of taking advantage of them or whatever.
Yeah.
So I failed that, and then I got into. So I failed 8th grade in middle school. Like, you got to do 8th grade again. And I said, I'm not going back to that middle school. There's no way. And my wife, sometimes we argue about this too, because we talk about whether our daughter's doing good or not. I'm like, well, why don't we just move her into a grade ahead, or why don't we move her back down? So you can't just skip. I remember I went and I talked to a teacher. We were having like orientation or something, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, we might have her skip to the next grade. And she just kind of looked at me like, what? What? Do you think your kid's that smart? Like, I don't know if she's that smart.
Yeah,
I know you
we're
can
gonna
still
find
do it.
out. Yeah.
Maybe she won't be. Maybe let's hire a tutor for that test.
Yeah. Realistically.
What does she need to know?
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
No,
Exactly.
Didn't you do that?
I did, actually. I think I skipped 9th grade. And it was actually, we did it for financial reasons. Me and my older brother we didn't want to spend the like time and the money to do like 2 separate, put us both through being
You guys a
homeschooled.
year apart.
Yeah, so we're a year apart. So they just was like, Gabe, you got to learn. Here you go. And just
did you do it?
crushed it.
Yeah.
I was actually really good in school. Yeah, it's you when you have the pressure on, you can learn.
Rock and roll.
It's going to
Yeah.
be twice as hard this year. Figure it out.
Figure it out. Which
Right?
was actually a great blessing looking back.
Mm-hmm.
It taught me how to work hard, how to get that discipline in. It's super beneficial now that I think about it, because I don't think about that often.
Yeah, it does.
Definitely.
It makes
Yeah.
a difference.
That's
So,
funny. It was quite literally the opposite experience for me.
Really?
Because I was homeschooled as well. By the time I was, going through high school a few years later after you, in my my junior year, I just didn't do any school. My parents didn't really care. They weren't really tracking anything. I just did nothing. So then
hilarious. I didn't know this.
my senior year, that was my sophomore year. My sophomore year, I just literally did nothing. So then my junior year, I was like, fuck, I got it. Like, I actually have to do this. Like, no, they're still not tracking me. I was like, I seriously need to get my butt into shape here. So I just worked twice as hard and finished my senior year, my junior year.
there you go. There you go. So I failed.
Super helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's
exactly.
good. So you kind of did the same thing. Well, no, we did a little bit different. I was even hackier in the sense that I probably couldn't have passed that test. So I was like, my parents did some research and found there was an alternative high school. So every city has these. The kids, and back in that era, if you got pregnant, you ended up at them. You just didn't, they were like the alternative high schools is what they used to call them.
Yeah.
And I was like, they were like, well, it's in a rougher neighborhood, but we visited the school. It's great. Do you want to go here? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I've heard about that. So that's like where the tough kids go. I've heard about that school. And they're like, well, it's half days and Fridays. Sold. So
That's all it takes.
half days, Fridays off, no homework. If you were a slacker, that could have hurt you.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know how much kids are really paying attention in school anyway. So I went to that alternative high school for all 4 years. I had perfect attendance. I used the half days to work full time to help support my family. I did internships in my junior year. I wanted to learn Chinese, but I couldn't because they didn't offer it in the district. So because I went to that school, they paid for me to go to university to learn Chinese. So I was able to start Mandarin as a junior in high school in college classes.
Wow.
So a lot of people graduate now with some college credit and whatnot.
Yeah.
I was able to do that, but I already had done Chinese history. I'd already done 2 years of Chinese language. Took some other classes too that were just interesting to me. And then I went back to the same class that I'd failed out of, and my Kung Fu teacher in Iowa at that time also was the AP English teacher at the high school I would have gone to. And I took his AP English class just to be sure that my English, like that those kids that they said I wasn't smart enough to go into school with, that I could still hang, right? Did I waste? I was afraid. Did I waste those 4 years? And it was super hard. It was, but I was behind. It was very hard. Like, he was strict. He was my Kung Fu teacher, so it was great. Like, I'd take the bus in, and he'd have a box of noodles waiting for me. And when I finished my homework, he would give me the noodles. But I remember one time I didn't bring my chopsticks, so he scolded me and didn't give me dinner. And so, I'd come and I'd do my homework, and I'm freaking writing about Oedipus and Animal Farm here, and he would break out a ruler and measure the margins on the paper of the essays that I turned in. If any student said, I'm sick, I can't bring my homework in, he'd be like, cool, I'll be right over. And he would go to their house and knock on their door and ask for the paper.
That is...
And even though you did it in a word processor and printed it out, he would still measure those margins to make sure you didn't put extra paragraph spacing in to meet the word count. So strict. So I was just Shaolin style, just doing English, and then I just eat my noodles. Okay, Sifu, it's time to train. He'd be like, now we go to the gymnasium. And I just right? Just in the gymnasium, practicing Kung Fu. And that was just my life. I go to school for half a day. I do work, and I would go and I would learn English and Kung Fu in a wrestling gym at a high school. And I got a B in that AP English class, which would have made it an A and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Didn't matter. B was good enough for me. And there were kids who were in my 8th grade who had such trouble with grades, they couldn't get into that AP English class. But the hack was, alternative high schools don't always issue credit.
Okay.
So there was no grades.
Oh.
There was no grades in my alternative high school.
Interesting.
So anybody who wanted to go anywhere, it was just on referral. And you had to be convincing enough.
Oh.
So we go to university, hey, he wants to take the AP English class. And the teacher's like, I want him in the class. And they're like, well, we don't know what his GPA is. How can he get into AP English? And so the teacher
There's
from...
no AccuPlace or anything?
Wow.
They didn't do placement like that. They were just like, no, we don't do that with this school. We just look at the student individually and blah, blah. So I hacked 4 years of high school with that move.
Wow.
Right?
That's
That's
great.
some scholastic kung fu.
That's some
Right?
intense
Scholastic
shit.
So then you can do this, people. Like, that's what you have to want it and find a way. When someone tells you no, you go ask someone else. It's sales, right? There'll be another. Just ask someone else. Just try and reinvent it. Someone will give in. It's hacking, right? And so I did that with university. So after that, I graduated. I graduated from high school. I came back after China, after cancer. I come back and I'm like, I want to go to university and learn Mandarin. So I want to go to University of Iowa, which definitely wants a GPA, right? And
Yeah,
this is a
for
state
sure.
university. Like, this was the top university to get into where people, maybe not, but people wanted in that university. Many of the people who couldn't get into it that I went to school with, and I come in, I show up at the admissions, and they just don't even know what to do with me. I'm like, I want to come, I want to enroll, I want to the University of Iowa, I want to take Chinese major, and they're like, I want to do Chinese major, Chinese business major, Chinese business major, minor, whatever, and they were like, okay. Well, where are your transcripts? I'm like, I don't have one. It's like, okay, well, you need to write a letter of referral. So the high school writes a nice letter of referral. I give it to them. I'm like, okay, well, we need some placements, so we'll have you take this placement test. I bomb the placement tests. And they're like, okay, well, Mike, but I have this degree, and I have college equivalents. And they're like, well, where do you have your college equivalents from? I had a GPA from my community college, which do good in the community college, folks, because that was like 3.6 or something like that.
Yeah.
Coming out of the college courses I'd taken in Chinese, which I was passionate about. If you just
Exactly.
do stuff you like,
Yeah.
then you're passionate. You're gonna do good in the class. I was teacher's pet in Chinese. They were like, this kid's gonna go to China. This is great. And so I came with that GPA, but they didn't know what to do with the high school stuff. So I went to like one of these like area education places. I took a geometry class, worked with a tutor. He helped me through the tests. I got an A in that, and then they were like, well, you need we don't know how to get you into the university without this recommendation from another university. I'm like, well, there's China. And so I call up my buddies in China, and I'm like, hey, I need a letter of referral. I need a referral, and I need my credits transferred and this. I'm like, well, we don't do it like that. I'm like, it's fine. Just write this. Had a translator, like, stamp it, seal it, brought it in. And then I was a student at the University of Iowa.
Wow.
So you can get into a
That's
college.
awesome.
Yeah.
You just have to be willing to fight. You go to the first grade, like, your GPA is not high enough. I give up. Stop. If that's where you want to be, you know.
Yeah.
So
A
I
lot of
took-
people just kind of, they give up after that first
You
shot.
can't.
Yeah.
Like, how else do people do it? You guys can't just do it. There has to be another way, is what I would always say. And I think this is some sort of like, now that I look back on it, it is almost like this sense of entitlement, but it's different than how people treat entitlement now, right? 'Cause
Nowadays.
entitlement now to kids means, no, this is really what I should just have. It should be given to me.
Exactly.
And I agree you're deserving of it, but you're not entitled to it.
Yeah.
And so
That's a very good distinction.
that's the distinction. Yes, you're deserving of that. And if
Yeah.
we could do it for everyone, we should. But don't act like you're entitled to it, right? And that's for everybody. But I think I just had that feeling like, no, like this is I should be able to do this, right? That's what I was thinking in my head. Is it no, I should be able to do that.
Yeah. It's that, yes, you're
Find a
deserving
way.
of it. Exactly. Now
Yeah.
go prove that you want it.
Yeah, I believed I was deserving of it, and I believed that anyone who tried hard enough, I was still naive enough to believe that anyone who tried hard enough could get what they wanted. Like, I was like, look, I know there's people out there who are smarter than me, but they aren't trying as hard as me, and I didn't believe there was that big of a difference in intelligence, so I thought, someone out here has done this, so if I work really hard, how could I not just learn what they're doing and do it? Because look at all these other people who went through traditional paths of learning, and they're half trying. They have these jobs. You look at them; they're not even trying to go, I'm an engineer, and blah, blah, blah. But you look lazy, right? Are you even trying, bro? And and they're not. So I'm like, if I try really hard, I think I'm probably smart enough to just qualify. You don't have to be just smart enough. Don't have to be the smartest, just smart enough. And oftentimes, not being that smart in order to realize what the real pitfalls are is probably better.
That's much more beneficial, I imagine. You get like more real world perspective as opposed to just coming in and being like, oh, I know everything. I have this great degree, or I have this great idea that everything's going to work in this certain way, and not having that personal experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so that's how I got into university, and then I studied, and I got to do more trainings. I eventually left university because I started realizing that the quality of those classes, they just really aren't that good. When I came to Colorado, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Colorado State. Colorado State had the math equivalency. Then I ran into the math problem again there too. I hired a personal tutor to go over with me and coach me through the online tests and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so I kind of half-hacked my way into university at
sure.
CSU there too. So I get accepted. I'm a CSU student. I start doing the material. I start looking at the price. I start looking at the content that's coming to me. And I'm like, this is overpriced. This is ridiculous. I will not pay $1,300 or $800 or even $300 for a teacher who can't use a PowerPoint. And the content was just like, it was bad. It was like, I'm going to go to YouTube and watch Khan Academy if I really want to learn this, right? Because that was big for a while,
Yep.
but and still is. It's really good content.
Right.
And I have a bunch of ways of
There's
learning.
a huge amount
Oh yeah.
for free.
There's
I
so
was like,
much you can learn.
You want me to pay that price to do this to get this quality? I'm out. And so I bailed out of anthropology because I went to school, started to go to school for physical anthropology when I became interested, like a guy who was so into paleo that I'm like, I'm gonna go to school for anthropology now.
That's
As an adult.
that is pretty. That's a strong commitment.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna do it, and then I realized, no, you weren't learning. I learned enough. Like everybody should take anthropology courses. If you haven't taken an anthropology course, take one. If you haven't taken a physical anthropology course, especially like you said, your girlfriend, right, or wife, your girlfriend, she should take one because when you look at a lot of primate physiology, right? And you primate anatomy, and you start to see, oh, this is why our hips are different. This is why we can walk. This is blah blah. And you learn so much about valgus and the femur and like why that matters. And you're like, this is really cool because you're looking at the evolution of how primates learn to walk, and then you're like, well, that's why that guy's got trouble because he's 2 million years to get him like this, and he walks around like that. And you can start to see those problems because I wanted to do OT for a while too.
Okay, interesting.
Very short while. Nothing that I would try and say I know anything about.
I feel like there's this whole stigma against most of what you've said today about.
Actually, I love that. That's great.
Right, I'd be pretty proud if that were me. Like specifically against this idea of this like impatience. Having this optimistic impatience and testing out all of these different things. People, from what I've seen and from what I've experienced, a lot of people have this idea that you have to have it figured out. That of course, you know what you want. It's what you want. So you have to commit to it 100% and you dive all the way in and that's what you want and that's what you're going to do. Instead of trying this and then trying that and trying to figure that out as you go. Have you experienced much of that? Or have you seen much of that?
Yeah, I could see it going that way. I think that what's important is to be scientific about it. Like I went in after everything expecting a result. And when I didn't get the result that I wanted, I changed my thinking. So I just realized faster more about myself. So I was able to keep a general higher level of happiness, even though I wasn't working as fast as I could to maybe financial independence or any singular goal. The more global approach left me feeling very fulfilled and very happy. Because if I just would have been like, oh, this is what I'm going to learn and spend 10 years on it, I wouldn't have had 3 or 4 of those quickenings, those periods of acceleration, those defining moments.
The exact opposite of what is taught in the idea of like go off to college and get your degree and follow this path. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah. Or even just get this job, or even, the naivete that comes with like, you're going to be an entrepreneur and your first or second or your third attempt is going to be successful. Jeremiah used to talk about, and I used to talk about this all the time, because we would walk around talking about, these ad budgets or these projects we were working on, or kind of like just joking about how surreal some of like venture capital is and all these other things. And then, but then I got to talking to him one time and found out that we did a lot of the same stuff early on. Like we were willing, like I would like go to the grocery store to get food for my family. Like I've got a career. I'm going to the grocery store with my Amazon seller app and I'm scanning barbecue brushes. And I swear I bought a box of barbecue brushes 6 years ago that I still see an email notification for. You just sold a barbecue brush, right? Because they were $2 on freaking at King Soopers, and they wanted $10 for them on Prime, right? And so it was that hustle. It has to be there. Like you have to be. That's the impatience. It's like, all I want to do is what can I do? What? It just takes too long. You're gonna lose interest. or you have to fail faster. That's that fail faster
Yeah.
mentality. Failure is not okay, but you have to accept it and learn from it, right? If failure was the goal, we'd all be winning. Right? So
Yeah.
it's not the goal, but what people are trying to encourage is that indifference and that sort of like just that bias of like, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to lose in this way, and I'm going to gain wisdom, even though sometimes it's very subconscious. And I'm going to gain that, like, and then I'm going to make a better decision. Thinking that you can remember everything you learned from an experience is in itself a problem. Because you learn something and you just went through it. There's wisdom baked in there, right? Wisdom is that timing piece. Like, it's when you talk to young entrepreneurs, like, hey, well, what do you think about this and this? Yeah, I know I thought about that. Yeah, I know I thought about that. Yeah, I know I thought about that. Okay, well, did you time it right? It's like when you tell, like, a kid that they did something wrong, and they come back to you, and you're like, did you know that was the wrong thing to do? They're like, yeah. It's just a timing issue. If they would have waited 10 minutes to go to their room and say the mouthy stuff that they said 10 minutes earlier, they wouldn't be in trouble, right?
That's hilarious.
So most of it's timing, right? So that's what I think it is like timing, and then it is harder because you're going to judge yourself, like, because are you an entrepreneur if you went and scanned brushes at, what's the stuff you used to hustle?
Retail arbitrage.
For the retail arbitrage, right?
Yeah, I think we started with closeout sales. The very first thing was going to Sears. I think it was like 2010, 2011. Sears was going out of business. They had a liquidation sale. We bought like Rock Band 2 or Rock Band 3. That was like a dying franchise, so there wasn't very many of them. And we sold it, I think we bought it for $8 and sold it online in 20 minutes for like $75. And I was like, fuck, this is the future.
Exactly.
So immediately we just started going all in retail arbitrage.
And so you have to do that. And then that's a skill set, like learning just the process of, have you fulfilled what you've sold? Like, some people are going to struggle with that. You have to go through that. Or what, I put it in a bag? How long before you realize you don't want to stuff in bags? Right? Or what's it going to teach you to have to stuff everything in a bag? Right? I mean, you imagine you're going to get to scale on something and you're like, are you going to fulfill it? What's the skill set you're really working on? Right? And so, and you have to figure out if that's what you really want to do, too. So the easiest way is just to play it. Just be like the kid, right? Who's playing doctor. Just play entrepreneur for a while and see what it feels like. But don't worry about that logo.
Don't worry about the logo.
You go all the way back to the beginning.
As much as branding matters, don't worry about the logo.
It's literally not that
Not in the
important.
beginning.
No. So I kind of want to ask a slightly different question, take us in a slightly different angle, because a lot of what you said is, and a lot of your opinions, your perspective, is about breaking this stigma, and it's about going against what is traditionally taught. And you even started this thing by saying so many people go into this fitness realm where you're in and they think like, oh, they want to work with these college people or these athletes. And in reality, it's these kids and it's these adults, right? And so you have this parkour gym, right?
Yeah, which we haven't really talked about, but yeah.
Exactly. So I kind of want to dive a little into that. So from what I've heard, you specifically you work with a lot of the kids in the parkour gym. Can you explain on that?
Yeah, so the majority of our demographic is kids, and I actually spend the majority of my time with my partners, the coaches, the adults, parents, sometimes with the kids, but most of the owners aren't the ones who ran the classes right now. We're focused on getting those coaches where they need to be, and I mean, for a while I taught kids, but nowhere near as much as my partners did, and what we started to learn, I think, and what early on was that you're gonna have to want to work with. When in the beginning we didn't know. Will teenagers do parkour?
Yeah.
Will adults do it? Will kids do it? And it turns out there was this need, and the need was around kids who wanted structure and wanted to train and wanted to move a particular way that sort of had some of the discipline of martial arts, but had a little more freedom and creativity of dance or b-boy, that hip hop stuff. Where there's more individuality, that's more American, right? And in nature, but had enough structure around it, discipline from the martial arts world, and so we found out that was really what kids were looking for in a lot of ways, and we were well positioned because we were already pretty looked up to for our abilities to come in and provide that, right? And that's what being an entrepreneur has to be about, is there's an element of it that's marketing where you're trying to figure out how to get people's attention and you're coming to terms with that, which is definitely a subject we could talk about. And then there's the value piece, right? It's like there's this, you have to be an amazing salesman to sell something where the value is not as much as it could be, or you have something that has tremendous value and you can pretty much be no salesman at all and move it if you have some sort of sales channel, right? Some sort of right network to do it. I mean, a lot of good products die, but the more valuable what you're offering is, the more you can ask for, and the more it's equitable, right? So it's easier to sell and to inform. So, like I said, after it was a couple of years now, I think it's been. I transitioned to work mostly on like e-commerce and business and marketing and then the gym. So those are the projects that support me now. So now I'm primarily focused on value, whatever it is that I do as an entrepreneur now. I've really cracked that mindset of what is it I'm trying to do, and it is just give, and then try to equate value, monetary value that's appropriate for what you're giving. Does that make sense? So don't go.
That's really interesting.
You go at it from the value standpoint. What a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is they devalue their own service, or they're on the sales side, they're selling trinkets and trash. Yeah. Right? Got a sales guy over here who's selling this garbage for 10 times what someone could probably get it if they did some market research, right? And then, in drop shipping, I was selling like cell phone cases for $2. It took 40 days to get there, right? Everybody starts with something like that, and you're like, I just can't ever let anyone see that I sold this product, right?
You have no idea.
I do, because I'm like cell phone cases are a modest answer.
No, absolutely.
Right. So like the very questionable items that you sell, where you're just like, the internet is.
I hope my mom never finds out.
Right. Well, AI is gonna find out one day, and we'll all have a reckoning. But until then, right, it's on the down low. And then there's like this other thing, which is just like I'm trying to help people understand that with children's health, you can wait until they're like we see kids coming in who are oftentimes so passionate about movement and physical activity that their head in a video game, they might as well, like they have like the skeletal frame of sometimes of like somebody who's 10 times their age, right? They got kyphosis from being on the phone. They have their bones of some degree like atrophied or underdeveloped. You just tell these are like weak kids, or kids who come in who are diabetic or pre-diabetic and they're under 12, right? But the majority of kids are just kids who have to move in this world, in this very static world right now, and they're disenfranchised with traditional sports, right? Because what are their options? Hit your head on a ball or do nothing. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because that's pretty much what sports are anymore. I don't know. I'm not a sports guy. I'm an athlete, but I'm not a sports guy. It's paradoxical. So I always couldn't stand watching like football and basketball and baseball because I couldn't play. But yet everybody else is really big into it, but they sit and eat chips and wings and watch. And I just could not relate. So I just go do parkour outside.
That's an interesting difference.
So it's like, oh, you're into sports? Oh, what did you train? Like, oh, what? No, I'm going to get drunk at the game, right? And so I'm tailgating. That's my training, bro. Ain't that right? Okay, well, you got diabetes and you're 30, so before the leg falls off, why don't you just just lift it with it, bro, right? So that's like, that's what we're after, is to teach, is to give kids and even give adults something they can be excited about. But we found that if we don't get them by 12, 13, it's almost not like it's too late, but it just gets so much harder to get them interested in being physical. But if we can catch a kid,
so many other shiny things.
And just something about who you think you're going to become matters between like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and when you hit puberty, and now nothing and no one is cool except for the wrong crowd. Yep. Right? So you're like, oh, I was gonna do that, but just gonna go vape. Shut up, right? But the kids are still like, oh, what'd you see? You did that? Oh, I didn't know that was. I didn't know. They're all just like so impressed by physics. They're just like, oh, did you see that ball move? Like, oh, you see that guy do that? Like, so there's still that. They can still be captured and inspired and develop their identities with movement, with athleticism, with physicality. And so that's a huge value.
That is so much value.
There's so much value,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I can't charge $50 to go to that school, right? So you know what I mean? Like that's what you have to think about when we go out and we position what we do and why it's different. People have to understand that that's our goal, is to fix that, to gamify what we do,
Yeah.
to keep kids interested and inspired, to give them healthy relationships with mentors and their coaches who aren't going to be like, you know, like a martial arts or some martial arts and some gymnastics and some teachers who are like gonna sit on you when you stretch and be like, no, you'll do push-ups now. Like we don't discipline with physicality. Physicality is an opportunity, right? You want a healthy relationship with movement. You don't want to be punished with push-ups. Does that make sense? That's one of the earlier things that we curtailed. And I was like, no, don't punish with movement. Movement is the opportunity. You get to sit and not do anything if you can't participate and collaborate. And then if we have too much of that going on and too much attrition, then we need to work on being more inspirational, right? So a pretty low attrition rate for any of those reasons or anything like that. Because that. And when you build the value, focus on the value like that, then it's just about being able to deliver the expression of that value to the families who are joining. Because they can pay for that then, or that kid can get sick and not move and atrophy and have these chronic illnesses, and they can get older, and then what are their healthcare costs going to be?
Going to be crazy.
Tens of thousands of dollars. So, you know, that's why I think entrepreneurs need to focus on the value of what it is they offer. And then when they're thinking about stuff that they're going to sell, they got to think about who their audiences are too, right?
That's really interesting. You say that about value. It's not often talked about, especially nowadays where it's like the hip thing to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And people want to like for drop shipping, people are finding, you know, the cheapest thing they can sell for the most expensive price, you know, to have the most wiggle room in acquisition on Facebook. But even in like my world of private labeling in the last decade, it was starting out, that was very much the same thing. It was find the cheapest thing you can buy in China of the worst quality, essentially, and sell it as if it's the premium product. And as time moved on, private labeling essentially died to the sense that there was so much competition, so much saturation that you had to be better out the gate. You had to be branded out the gate, and you had to lead with value out the gate. So that's something that's changed in the last like 2-3 years with the private labeling game, I'd say.
Yeah, that 2 to 3 years.
Leading with value in every single aspect of the business is absolutely like detrimental at this point.
Yeah, you have to have, it's like before you could have a general store.
Yeah.
And you could drop a dozen to 100 products on it, and you could link people to a product on an ad straight to that product, and they would be like, cool, this is a cool thing, I'll just buy this. I have that sort of inherent trust. But people don't realize that, you know, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I believe it was like in the 50s and 60s, oftentimes if you bought something and you brought it home and you took it out of the box and it worked, that was a good day.
Yeah.
This is what I'm told.
So
I
true.
wasn't around then, but like the expectations that something's going to work exactly, and even put it through the abuse that you're going to put it through in like unintended use is right. So you know what I mean? So there's that, but you guys have done a great job of that because of your products and whatnot. You're taking. I still stand by that as one of those like impatient things to do as an entrepreneur, and this is the things that won't be permissible because people will be like, I need to go through this product testing life cycle. I need to get samples from China. I need an MOQ. I need to have all that in front of people. I need to have those customer testimonials from those things. I still stand by the fact that you can try that, but if we have 10 people try that, maybe one of them is successful because only one of those 10 products might actually work, get any kind of traction. So it's unfortunate, but the truth is you just don't have enough time to do it that way. And the few people that were able to get away with doing it, luck. They were my wandering into China and just being lucky kind of like story showing up at school. With
level 10 luck story.
Right, level 10 luck story. You have to test faster. That's why I support the idea of marketing products that you can fulfill, but you haven't bought inventory on yet. We always talk about this, right? You want to sell the next like straw for camping that is a filter straw, right, or something like that.
The next
right?
generation of filtration straws.
Filtration straws, right? Okay, have you sold a straw? Have you retail arbitraged a straw? You think you're so passionate about straws?
Right. Who's buying straws?
Who's
what
buying
are the problems
straw?
with the straws?
But yeah, and it's just like, can you even sell a straw? Like you want to make this new straw, but you haven't sold any straws. So go out and try and sell like a drop ship straw. That's the closest thing you can get to it. Or actually, if you think that you want to sell it so bad and you can, find a product that you think is making a bunch of money because you got the idea. Okay, well, who's the leader in straws right now? Buy some of theirs and see if you can sell those online. Like sell them on eBay, sell them on Amazon, see if you can move them, even if you don't make a profit.
Just to see what the
market is,
what the market is, what the psychological triggers are behind that product.
Right. And then test your lines and find your audience. And you were like, okay, cool. Well, I found that really I thought it was campers who wanted these straws, but actually it turns out it's people in Flint, Michigan, because they can't drink the water, right?
Yep.
And so now all of a sudden you don't have to have a straw that looks like it belongs in REI. You got to have a straw that looks like it belongs in Walmart, right? And it does neon LEDs, and you're like, oh, I'm so cool because I can drink the water, right? I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like that's what you just never know. That's the whole point until you test and you look at the data and you stop guessing and you start doing.
Yeah. There's too many guesses out there that people guess and think that that's a fact.
Yeah.
That is just what it is.
Yeah. You have to get at a very fast pace too. You know, I mean, I've had some mentors and partners who've talked to me, and we've tested products, and their success rate's very high, but people don't hear about the failures and what's happened. You know, especially with e-commerce, when you have like payment providers that go down, or you have fulfillment issues, or your Facebook page, your business ads manager gets shot down, your Amazon account has trouble. There's all this drama, and you have to be able to take that stuff with stride. That's why I know it's weird. I talked to my friends about this last night, but I love like Goku as a mentor, right? Because if anybody watches Goku, if you don't, you have no excuse.
Goku? I apparently have no excuse.
Dragon Ball?
Oh, okay.
Dragon Ball?
I don't watch Dragon Ball. Okay.
You need to go watch some Dragon Ball. That's because you're too busy making money.
That's it. That we'll go with that.
I don't have time for cartoons, Travis. I'm trying to make money, right? So that's probably what it really is, to be honest, because I know you. So, I mean, just a little bit. Play it in the background. But anyway, so Goku is this is the protagonist of Dragon Ball, this cartoon series, and he's this this fighter and has this history. He's actually based on the Chinese character, the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, which is a journey to the West, a Chinese classic novel. But he's spun into this character in modernity. From
Journey
Japanese.
to the West.
Journey to the West. It's a Chinese classic, right? It would be like Shakespearean equivalents or something like that. So his attitude towards everything is he just loves the fight. Like he just loves to get better, and he loves the fight, and he would just get annihilated in all these battles with these aliens and stuff like that. And his attitude, he's always just like just at the verge of death, and he's just kind of like giggling. He's like, "Oh, that was pretty good. All right, let's try it again," and he just comes at it, right? And you have to have that, like, oh, shutting down my Facebook ad account, that's cute. Let's try again, right? One of the things I didn't talk about is I went through a bankruptcy after cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had cancer. You look back at it, I got
I
forget about a bankruptcy, right? I'm on to the next thing. So right after cancer, I go through this bankruptcy, and it was during the housing crisis. I had bought my first house, and I had these medical bills, and the housing market flipped, and I was like, boom, and it was just no way. Like, bills were just not meeting income, and I was sitting on all this debt, and I had this realtor, and she just gave me this great advice, and she's like, you might want to look at bankruptcy. And I was like, man, that sounds horrible. You can't recover from bankruptcy. I was thinking, this is terrible. I'm like 20... I was young, like early 20s, and I'm like, bankruptcy in my early 20s? And then when I sat down with them, and they're like, yeah, it's $1,000, and then you don't owe anything. And I was like, sold. What? Because again, the right way is you get a job, you pay off what you owe on your house, and you pay off your debts, and you pay off your cancer bills. And that was just like, I was like, if these guys, like I'm looking at people who are like, whatever, like the Larry Kings or whomever, these, like, I knew about people who were just had been through bankruptcies before, who were still just these famous, successful entrepreneurs. And I was just like, man, I took my risks. I took my risk on this house. I wasn't going to do anything with the house. Like, I borrowed money to put the, it was like a steam heat house, and I put in the forced air, half put it in because I ran out of money. And then, I was sitting on a bunch of cancer bills I couldn't, pay for. So I was just like, whatever, I'm going to do it. And it was as if nothing had ever happened. I went through the process, and I think right now, if there's people out there right now who sit on a huge amount of debt, consult the people you trust and whatnot. But it's a tool, it's an option. Like, and it cleared me and allowed me to continue to do other things, and I was still able to buy houses. You know, you go the only thing that really kills you is like, you can't, at that time, I don't know what it is now, if you have you go 3 years out of, you can't get FHA within 3 years of a bankruptcy. But once you're out of 3 years, you can get FHA again. So when I moved out here, I bought my house on an FHA loan.
Wow.
And that was only like 5 years out of bankruptcy or something like that.
Wow.
So I was it, and I got...
That's awesome. Did you have like holdings companies set up or shell corporations set up for whatever assets went bankrupt? Or is it
I wasn't worth anything. I wasn't worth anything. That's not true. I had a retirement, I had a pension from the company I'd worked for, and I had a 401k, and they actually don't touch those. Yeah. So it's really not that. I mean, let's be honest. It was designed for certain people to use, and they were trying to protect some people's assets, right? So I mean, you could have kept the house, you could have kept the car. You can keep your retirement-related accounts, things like that. I think you can keep your HSA. A certain amount of like physical assets, even if you're just sitting on gold or something, you can keep a certain amount of that. And so I don't know if they're that lenient anymore, but that's the way it was. It wasn't that bad. And then immediately following, everybody wants to lend you because they know you can't file bankruptcy for another 7 years or something like that. And no, I have like a merciless like credit score in like the 800s right now. Like, great, hackers are going to be like identity or whatever, right? And then, so it wasn't like that. And once after a certain number of years, it's just not even on the record anymore. It's discharged. You can talk to the credit reports. That's another thing, is early on when I had trouble with credit, when I was trying to get loans and whatnot, is back when, now people know about this, but back in the day, like I had medical bills and stuff like that got on there when I was going through the cancer stuff. And you could just dispute them, and they had some rules about timeline to return the dispute, and if they don't, then they have to take it off. And so I would just like have this. I had to hire this online company to just send them continuously like spam them with disputes until they would miss the timeline, and then it would just fall off the credit report.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, more Haxon.
Yeah.
So what does Arnold Schwarzenegger say? Break the rules, not the law. That's what I read in his most recent autobiography, I think it's autobiography. He said, you got to break the rules, bend the rules, not the law. Just to think of things differently. You know, you got to have fight. Like, what's the... People are, you don't do that, that's dishonest. I'm like, no, I'm trying to survive.
There's a big difference, yeah.
Your righteousness does not put food on my daughter's plate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if I think some, like, big corporation that's holding me for this stuff, for when I had cancer... Right? Like, there's nobody. They just have, like, soldiers in a call center just like, right? Like, they don't care. They don't even know. So it's like, you have to fight. You have to be willing to fight. And you have to be like, no, I just don't settle. Just don't sit and take it. You got to have that fight.
You got to have that fight.
Gotta have that fight.
That's huge.
Yeah. You're going to sit and take it. You're going to let somebody do that to your family. Like, no, you got to feel in the right. I mean, don't take it too far. Some people are taking it really far right now. I'm not going to name names or positions, but, you know, I'm just saying, like, you have to be, like, you need a lot of ownership. I still have ownership, but, you know.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think on that point, we can call this, dude, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I so appreciate you coming in here.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
Absolutely.
Thank you for recording my rantings. And then shameless plug for myself.
This is yours.
Yeah. So, Travis Grant Lee on Instagram, and then the gym is Apex Movement. So you guys should follow Apex Movement and check out the awesome like athletes. You're always gonna see cool stuff coming out of the athletes. Watch the kids killing it. And then my domain travisgrantlee.com has not been updated in a long time, but I'm gonna probably do a refresh on that soon. So if anyone wants to reach out to me on projects, that's a good place to start. And that's it.
Hell yeah.
That's all I
Hell
got.
yeah. Dude, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.